Have you ever wondered how developers nowadays are building products so fast and bringing them to market while making a profit? Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly how they do that, but what I can tell you about is a platform that a lot of these developers are choosing to use to integrate payments into whatever they're building so they can start making money the second they launch their product. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how you can use Lemon Squeezy to sell physical products, digital products, and even online subscriptions, and really put anything you want behind a paywall. What makes Lemon Squeezy different from platforms like Stripe or PayPal is that Lemon Squeezy is a merchant of record and not just a standard payment processor. So this means that Lemon Squeezy handles all payments for you. They take on the liability for all the transactions with customers, and they even help you with international payments and compliance while helping you arrange the taxes for these specific payments. So with Lemon Squeezy, you get a lot more tools and features out of the box, whereas these other platforms just give you a way to process payments, but the rest you really have to set up on your own. So if you like the batteries included approach, Lemon Squeezy really gives you a lot of features to work with. So with that introduction, let's go ahead and jump on in and see how we can set up our first Lemon Squeezy store, and then we're going to learn how to connect to the API and actually how to integrate this into our website. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to lemonsqueezy.com and go ahead and create a new account. And once your account's set up, you're going to want to go ahead and create a store. We'll give it a name, and I'm going to call this Dennis Store. Hopefully that URL is not taken. And once everything goes through, we need to complete the process of setting up our store. We don't need to complete everything. We're going to stay in test mode, so we just need to get some basic settings here set up. So we have the store name, then the contact email that is required. So I'll throw my email in here. And that should be it for now. So if we go back to setup right here, we see that the next step is to activate the store. So we don't want to activate it yet. We want to use this in test mode so we can actually test transactions and not have to spend real money. So the next step would be to simply go into products right here. And we want to add some products to this store. So we're going to select new product, and I'm just going to add a few products. If you want to use the products that I'm using, the images are going to be linked up in the video description. So go ahead and grab those and add those in. So for pricing, I'm going to leave that as a single payment. We'll leave it at standard pricing. And for the price itself, let's just try doing $15.85. Tax category, let's just leave it at digital goods and services, including ebooks. Media, I'll take the picture from my desktop, and this is going to be the first book. So these are just going to be books here, and that's going to be the thumbnail that we're going to use right there. And from here, we can just go ahead and publish the first product, and we'll add a second. So we see the first product. Let's go ahead and add one more real quick just so we can query multiple. And price, we'll leave that at single payment, standard, and we'll leave this one at $9.99. And media, we'll just upload the next picture here. And once that's published and uploaded, we should have our online store. So now we're ready to actually use the API and connect to this store. So we see our two products right here. So now that we have our online store set up, I want to show you how to use the Lemon Squeezy REST API to actually make these requests and render out products from our store, complete transactions, and so on. So we want to learn how to build this into an application, and I'm going to show you some very basic requests. So from the homepage, if we go to the resources tab, we'll go into the developer docs right here. And in here, you're going to get all the instructions on how to work with this. So we can either just use the standard REST API, or we can use one of the SDKs. The official SDKs are Laravel and the JavaScript SDK. I would highly recommend using these because they do make it quite easier. But in this one, we're going to stick to the basic REST API because I really want to show you how everything works under the hood. So to make a basic call here, the first thing we need is that root URL, and that's going to be api.lemonsqueezy.com. Now with every request, we also need to pass in the following in the headers along with an API key to make sure that the requests are authenticated. So not just everybody can make requests to our store. So we're going to generate this key and make sure that it's passed along. Before we start making any request, I want to set up a simple application which we can use to make API calls from, so we can see this in a more practical example. So to do this, I'm going to use Vite to set up a new application and clear out some of the boilerplate code. So this way we have a new project to work with. And if you want to follow along with the example code on screen, you can, but just know that all the code here is linked up in the video description. So you can always just go ahead and check that out and reference it if you want to test this out for yourself. As a side note, we will be using Axios to make requests. So if you're going to be following along with the exact code that I'm showing here, make sure you have that installed. Okay, so now that we have our project set up, what I'm going to do is import Axios so we can make that request. And I'm going to create a function here to actually get the products on first load. So we're going to call that get products. We'll make that an async function. And I'm going to make sure that this is triggered immediately. So right when the page loads, we're going to call get product, and we just want all the products from our store. Now I'm going to quickly create a try catch here and start the Axios request. So this is going to be a get request, and we also want to make sure we catch the error. So we'll do console.error, and we'll just make sure that any error is caught right here. Okay, so at this point, inside of the try statement, I'm going to create some space here, and we're just going to set the response to Axios.get here, and we need to pass in the URL and headers. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and create that configuration, and we're going to call that lsqy config. So for lemon squeezy config, I figured that would make the most sense to shorten that. And this is just going to be an object, and in this object, we're going to have an API key, so API_key. And we're going to quickly get that right now. And the next thing we're going to get is that base URL. So we want to set this right here. So in the future, when we make more requests, we can just access this config object right here and get those values. So if we go back into our store, let's go ahead and grab those. So first thing I want to do is grab this URL right here from the documentation. So HTTPS API lemonsqueezy.com. That's going to be the base URL. We'll set that right here as a string value. And then the next thing we're going to want to get is our API key. So what we're going to do here is go into setup right here. Actually, inside of settings, we can see an API tab right here. And here's where we can create our new API key. So we're going to create one, and I'm just going to say demo create. And this is only going to be visible once, so make sure you save this. If you ever lose it, go ahead and just recreate one and just make sure you update it anywhere you set this value. So from here, we can just go ahead and set that API key. And what I'm going to do is also create a headers object right here. So we're not going to focus on best practices or styling right now. We're just going to set things up so we can actually use the API as fast as possible. So inside of headers, what I'm going to do is just go back into the documentation, and I'm just going to copy this directly so we can pass those in, and we'll throw that in, and this will be wrapped in a string. And for the content type, I'll just copy that directly as well. And we're going to throw this in right here and wrap this in a string as well, or in quotes. Okay, so last thing we need is the access key. So we're just going to go ahead and do authorization. And this is going to be with a backtick, and we're just going to do bearer. I can never say that word. So bearer, and then that's going to be the actual token. So we're going to go ahead and pass that in. So lsqy_config.api key. And for this URL, what we're going to do is just go ahead and throw in v1 just to make sure we're getting the correct version. So we'll pass that into the URL. We have the headers, and at this point, we are ready to make the request. So in this request, we specifically want to access the base URL and then get the product specifically. So wrapping this inside of backticks right here, what I'm going to do is also get that base URL. So lsqy_config.url, and then we're just going to add in a /, and we're going for the products. Now at this point, we can just pass in our headers, and we'll just take those headers in right here. That should authorize this request, and from here we should just be able to console this out. So after the request, let's just do console.log, and we'll take this response. And I also want to make sure we don't just return a promise, so we want to add in await right there. So it's async await, make sure we add that. And if I save this, let's go ahead and check this out. So if I refresh this, here we go. So we have that response right here, and let's just try to read this. So let me zoom in a little bit. And here we have our headers. We have data right here. Inside of data, we want to go into the data attribute from there. And then we see a product. So we see the type of product, the first one. So we have two products, 0 and 1. And in here, we see a product ID, all the attributes right here. So we see the buy now URL. So we have a full product object here. So we can see the price, all that information, and we can use this information to actually render the product out. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to add a little bit more code here, and we're going to render this out just to see how we can actually work with this and make sure this is visibly appealing. So let's jump back into index.html. So what we're going to do is grab this books container, and we're going to get this div right here, and we're going to append all the books in here. And we're also going to add a little bit of styling, which will be copied and pasted because we don't want to focus on that here. So let's go ahead and create a new variable, and we'll call this books container. And this will be document.getElementById. And we're just going to go ahead and get books container. So that's why the div that we set here is important. make sure that it's named correctly. And at this point, what I'm going to do is once we get all the products, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we render these products out. So what I'm going to do is create a new function, and I'm going to make this a traditional function. And we're going to call this render books to DOM. Okay, so this is going to take in the products here. And we're just going to go ahead and call this in. Let's go ahead and actually make sure that's set correctly. We're going to go ahead and call this right here. So once we get that response, we're going to go ahead and pass in the books right here. So we're going to do response.data like that. And I believe that should give us the books right there. So if we look at this request, we have data, and then that'll give us the array. So that's what we're passing in. So once we pass in the products here, we're just going to go ahead and iterate through these. So we're going to do products.forEach, and we'll just do prod for product. At this point, what we're going to do is we're going to create a product card, and we're going to append it to the DOM. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do item here, and we specifically want the product attribute. So we'll just do prod.attributes. And the reason why we want to do this is because we have our data. Inside of data, we have products, so we have the type, and then the product ID, and then we specifically want to get the attributes link right there. So instead of calling products.attributes every single time, we're going to set that to item, but we're accessing the attribute, and then we're getting the buy now URL, created at, description, and so on. So we're setting that to item, and here we can just create a product card, and we're going to use backticks here. And what I'm going to do is just go ahead and paste in a div that I have prepared here. And you can just pause this and copy all of this if you need to make sense of it. So we're just going to tab that over, and we'll create some space. So we have a card right here, then an image, and then a wrapper around the book details. So at this point, let's just go ahead and actually update this. So we're just going to go ahead and start getting each value here. So we're going to get that image URL. So we can remove all of this, add in the dollar symbol, and we're going to pass in a variable. This will be item dot large underscore thumb underscore URL. And that is right here. So we have different URLs here for the image. So we have a thumbnail, but it's very small, so we want the larger one. So we're just grabbing this right here, and that's going to give us the URL. And let's just go ahead and actually save this and test this at first. So we want to test this one out and see how the rest work. So once we have that, then we just want to go ahead and actually append this to the DOM. So we have the product card. Then we'll go ahead and create some space here. So let's see, this closes out right here. So after all of this, we're just going to go ahead and do book container dot insert adjacent HTML. And we'll just do after begin. And we're going to insert the product card. And let's just make sure it's working. So we pass in all the products right here to render books to DOM. Then we iterate through all those books and then add them to the book container. And let's see. Okay, so here we go. I can actually see the books. They're not styled right now. And at this point, I have the covers to the two books, but the data here, or the data, is still static. So we still see Mountain of Olives and then Mountain of Olives. So what I'm going to do is also just copy some styling in here. So we can just go ahead and paste this in. So we'll just go into styles. I'll paste that in. Again, this is all going to be linked up in the video description. You can get the source code there, but that's just some basic styling. Doesn't do too much here. So from here, let's go ahead and just finish this up here. So we're going to take the title here, and we're going to pass in item.title, or name actually. So that's the attribute name here. And then we also want the description. So we're going to remove that static data right there, and we'll do item.description. Okay, so once I can type that in. And for the price, what I'm going to do, let's actually just look at this real quick. So every time I save it, it just refreshes it. So let's see, we have the price and then price formatted somewhere here. So price formatted, that'll give me the string value of it, and then we actually get the price here. So we want the price formatted, so we don't want to deal with this on our own. And then we're just going to go ahead and actually add in the URL to the buy now button. So that's going to be done right now. So buy now URL. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and copy and paste that over right here. We'll do item dot and then paste that, price formatted, and then let's see, item dot buy underscore now underscore URL. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually give this a test. Let's see what we have here. We have all the proper information. It looks like the prices are updated. That looks good. And if I click on the buy now URL, let's go ahead and open this up. And this takes me to the checkout page. So as you can see, we're in test mode, and I can actually use dummy credit cards to complete the entire transaction process and see the payment go through. So we're dealing with fake money here, but this way we can actually test this out before we ever go into production. So let's go ahead and actually just fill this out. So what I'm gonna do is just go ahead and fill in some fake information here. So I am gonna use my email here, but for the card, I'm just gonna use the fake credit card number. So that's 4242. And then just keep repeating that, and that's pretty much it. And then for the expiration, I'll do 12/31, and then 123 for the CVC. We'll pass in my name here, and I'll just do 11/11, and let's just say Washington, and I'll just do Vancouver. And then I believe the zip code does have to be real, so that is a real zip code right there, but not a real street name or number. And let's just go ahead and actually purchase this. So if I hit pay, let's see how this works. Give it a second, and it's actually going to send an email to that email that I entered, and I can view my order, and I see that I paid here. And if I go back into my store, let's go into products. Here I see that I should see that I've made a sale. So let me refresh that real quick. Maybe it just takes a minute to update. Let's see the orders. Okay, here we go. So I see an order has come through. I see that I've made a sale. That looks good right there. I can actually see the information on this sale right here. Awesome. So we've completed the transaction. So what I also want to show you is something that we're going to have to take care of in the next part for this video. So right now the transaction's been complete, but what if you build this into your own backend and you don't just want to sell a product that maybe sends out some kind of PDF to that specific book? What if I want this to be a book on my website and I want people to be able to actually access that? I hope that didn't make too much noise. So what I usually would need to do is pass in some values from that specific user that's logged into my website, and then actually attach that user ID to the product that they bought. And that can be done with a webhook, and the documentation talks about this. So let's just go ahead and actually set up a webhook, and then I'll explain how that works, and then we'll take care of that in the next part. So inside of settings, we're gonna add in a webhook here, and let's just go ahead and create a new one. And for now, let's just try localhost. That's not actually gonna work. It's not gonna send data anywhere. This has to be a live URL because we can't just send data to localhost. Otherwise, Lemon Squeezy would be sending this to everybody that's running on localhost. So a sign-in secret, I'm just gonna do Dennis123. This is a secret that we don't have to worry about right now, but this is used to verify where the request is coming in from. And I wanna trigger this webhook. So I wanna send data to the URL that we're gonna provide, and later on, this will be a live URL. This is gonna be sent anytime a payment is completed. So let's say order created, there should be subscription payment success. And let's actually just do order created as well. So we'll go ahead and save that. And we're gonna be able to view the webhook in here. And again, we'll take care of the rest later. So save the webhook. Okay, and we're gonna complete this transaction one more time. So if I go to the webhook, actually I need to go ahead and process this. So we'll go back to localhost, and we're gonna open up the book. So let's buy this second book now. We'll enter some information. We'll do 4242. Okay, so we're gonna go through this process one more time. We're gonna see the store or this payment in our store. So the order is complete here. So we can go back into settings here, and let's go into webhooks and let's see what actually happens here. So right now we see that a webhook was delivered, or it tried to deliver a webhook, but it failed because we sent it to localhost and localhost won't work. So that's totally fine. We're just here to see the information that's being sent to that webhook. So when a transaction occurs, this information is being sent to that specific endpoint. And for us, what we're gonna do is we're gonna configure a backend URL whenever we're authenticated, and we're gonna send that user ID to make sure that it sends along with the webhook, so we know specifically what user in our application actually purchased this product, and then maybe we can give access or whatever we want to do to maintain that user information. That's completely up to you, but this is how we can actually keep that state between Lemon Squeezy and our own backend. So at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave the project off right here, but in the next video, what I'm gonna do here is continue based off of what we learned here, and we're gonna build out a fresh application that actually has user authentication and has a subscription model to actually purchase products and access all the products behind a specific paywall. So we're gonna deal with reoccurring subscriptions. We're gonna learn how to customize those webhooks and actually pass in that custom user data, which is something that's very important to know how to do. So this was a basic introduction, but if you wanna watch the rest, make sure to stick around around for the next video, and also subscribe to the AppRight YouTube channel to be sure to see more content like this.